because there's that sense of guilt that what was happening under your roof. And now, by her being found, brings that all to your plate. And it doesn't.
Oh no, if I knew anything, I would so tell you. I love it. She said, you guys tell me your suspicions, but I'm not going to believe it until I have her body.
So there are things, and the reason I say these things, and again, I'm not trying to be, but the reason I say these things is a lot of things you said, and a lot of things I've kind of researched between Fox 35 story, between your initial statement to the police. A lot of things have changed. The initial statement to the police was you watched her get dressed, you watched her leave, you knew exactly what she was wearing.
Can I tell you my process or where I came from with that?
A lot of times there are indications of no remorse in instances of someone being guilty, but sometimes the person feels sorrowful and it's still not remorse. And that's very much what we're seeing here. We're seeing real tears, but it comes around her guilt and her participation in this, her perhaps being charged with something and her fear around that and her defeat around that, not necessarily around her daughter being gone. And then there's that distancing language there. Until I have the body, not my daughter, my baby, my child, nothing of the sort. Does not name Madeline herself. So there's that distancing there that I would not expect to see when it comes to a mother and a daughter that should have been otherwise bonded and connected. But of course, no bonded and connected mother would have allowed this sort of thing to happen where Stefan was in bed with her daughter and should never have been. And there's parts of this interrogation where it's mentioned that other house guests did not want to share a bathroom with Stefan, with a male. She does not state that her daughter perhaps would feel uncomfortable sharing a bed with Stefan, or that matters in any capacity. Just that the house guests were worth more respect at that point than her own daughter. And the type of person that would do that, of course, is more concerned with herself and her own guilt. Very self-centered, usually.
Work. Her then 4-year-old daughter got a creepy feeling from the tall stranger in a denim uniform. Did she realize that this was her grandfather?
No, she didn't know who this man was.
Which probably eases your guilt, because I know you feel bad about that.
I do. That's one moment in being a mother that I wish I could take back.
That was new.
So we're really not seeing those eyebrow flashes and forehead creases in emphasis of anything going on here, which tells me that it's possible she might not be fully telling the truth here, and verbally a lot does not make sense. Why would she take her daughter to a prison to see a man that she has not explained that is related to her in some manner? We do see eye blocking around didn't and specific instances here, but not much of a blink rate otherwise. And eye blocking, of course, is blinking but keeping your eyes shut for a longer amount of time than what we would expect. Normally when you blink, it would be very quick. So it's real subtle here, but that is what is going on when she says her daughter didn't know this was her grandfather at the time, and verbally it doesn't make sense. It's possible that she took her daughter to see this man in prison without explaining anything to her daughter, but that would also be bizarre and would explain why her daughter would be a bit creeped out that they are now in this prison seeing this tall man in a uniform that she has never seen before, potentially, and that's what we are seeing here.
Should you tried to stop him? Was he too strong?
He is very strong.
Was it hard for you to try to stop him? It was very hard for you to try to stop him, wasn't it? He's too strong, wasn't he? Yeah, I see that.
So I said in the previous video, and it very much still stands here, that Gypsy is trying to keep certain things still quiet, and she's emotionally making sure there's this barrier between herself and this interrogator where he's going to find it difficult to get information out of her. Unfortunately for her, this is most likely not his first rodeo, not the first suspect that has tried to do this. It is very performative. He does not comfort her or offer her tissue because there's no real tears. And it's noisy for a reason that's to emotionally provide this barrier between herself and this interrogator and any questions he might confront her with. I also don't think this blanket placement is entirely accidental or casual in any capacity or comfortable in any capacity. The blanket provides a physical barrier, but at one time it drops and it's half over one shoulder and half over the other, like a sling, like someone wounded. And I believe that's very much done on purpose. That Gypsy perhaps feels that this adds to her performance of being the victim here, of being someone who has been hurt. That's just my belief based on what I'm observing. I don't think that that's accidental. That doesn't seem very comfortable. It hides one arm, and that can hide illustrators and adapters and things like that, but it also can add to her performance of being a victim, of being someone who was wounded, and now she's physically showing these alleged wounds from Nick Godejohn, her partner at the time, and she's really playing up the victim to get out of the situation herself, throwing Nick Godejohn under the bus here.
Look at me. Did you try to stop him? Okay. Hey, I'm proud of you. Look at me. I'm very proud of you for that. Okay, this is what stepped in my direction. Okay. How did you try to stop him? Did you try to pull the knife away from him? Was that a yes? I can't guess with your nodding, so that's why I'm asking you. It looks like you're shaking it.
Gypsy also seems kind of hesitant in some parts to completely answer the question, to fully throw Nick Godejohn under the bus. I believe this is because of either this veering away from the initial narrative that her and Nick Godejohn potentially rehearsed, and so she's afraid to veer away from that narrative, knowing what Nick might say himself and how that might come out as a lie on her behalf. Or it might be done because she doesn't know that she's going to be able to follow through with this particular lie. If she believes that if she were asked to elaborate that she could do so. So it seems that she's hesitant for this reason. If it were the truth, if Nick Godejohn had actually physically harmed her, she would have been more direct in answering that. She would have been able to say yes or no without hesitation. So it's my belief that she did this because it veers away from the rehearsed story. And the interrogator, I don't believe, is being comforting because he actually believes she needs comforting. I think that this is another tactic of his to continue providing her an out, which I also discussed in my previous video. He provides her this out, this escape, this justification for what took place here.
Head up and down. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. What did he do with the knife after all this was done?
I'm sorry that I lied to you from the beginning. I'll tell you the truth all now.
Okay. Good. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
I love him so much, but maybe he can't help now.
Okay.
For his silent ways.
Maybe he can.
He killed my mom.
He killed your mom.
Yes, I know it.
How did you do that?
He was supposed to come and visit me.
There are different parts of this where she could potentially be equally deceptive. In one part, her head's down, I loved him, and she has those performative crying noises. There are no tears. And her head's down and she says, I love him. But this really isn't crucial to her being convicted. So it's more possible for her to just not face him when she's being deceptive. This is not something that someone would do if they loved someone else, is just completely throw them under the bus the way that she does in this interrogation. Those are just my thoughts, my opinions there. But she clearly doesn't want to confront anything when her head goes down. And she has this protection. That's what we do when we're so protective. We're not being open, honest, communicating freely. Our heads will be down. And we're protecting this part, a vulnerable part of ourselves. Then she looks up at this interrogator, and when there are crucial parts related to this crime directly, she stares directly at him. Now, it's difficult again to see her facial expressions, to see if there's disgust, contempt, joy, a high blink rate or anything like that, but based on what I can tell, there isn't a high blink rate. It almost doesn't exist when she's staring at this interrogator, and this is sometimes a way of taking control. When you were a child, I know at least when I was a child, adults would tell me, look at me in the eye when you're telling me something. That's how I know you're telling me the truth. And through this, people such as Gypsy Rose can learn to manipulate others by staring directly at them in the eye to make them believe that, in this case, make the interrogator believe that she is being honest and truthful, even though she goes back to those performative tears when she is hesitant to answer something. She looks down when she's being deceptive, but it's not directly related to the crime, such as saying that she loves Nick Godejohn. There's not going to be a jury deciding whether she actually loves the man or not. So that's not really relevant to her, and she's able to not fully confront that. That is based on what I observe, what I believe is happening.
And I thought we were gonna go outside and we're just gonna sit together for a while on the porch. And
At your mom's house?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he came inside and he started walking to my mom's room, and I told him that we need to go outside.
What was your mom doing at that point? Was she asleep?
She was asleep, and
I want you to pay attention to the position of everybody in this story. They're outside. She says he came inside. That would imply that she was already inside when he came inside. So there's this space, this gap in time between her being inside and then him coming inside, and then him going to Dee Dee's room, allegedly, and her saying, we need to go back outside. We're going outside. Position-wise, a lot is not adding up, and there's a reason for that, and that is most likely she is being deceptive. And based on what we know now, she is. But position-wise, it doesn't make sense, and if we analyze her statement in this interrogation, I believe there's so much more that should have been brought up in the trial. Just my opinion.
I got up to use the restroom, and at that point, he had put me in the bathroom, and he had locked the door.
Okay.
And he went to my mom's room, and I heard her cry, and her my
You heard your mom crying. You heard your mom crying, and you heard your mom calling out your name.
Mm-hmm.
She was screaming.
So again, there's not a lot body language-wise I could say in this particular moment. There's still that barrier physically between herself and the interrogator when she has the blanket up. There's still the performative tears. No real tears. She's not even attempting to wipe her eyes. He's not offering her a tissue. She's not asking for one. It's very noisy. It's not natural. That aside, though, again, position-wise, a lot does not make sense. She says, I got up to go to the restroom, and then he put me in the bathroom. Well, if she was already headed towards the restroom, there would be no reason for him to physically put her there. So this is just adding to her victimhood narrative. This is for her further throwing Nick Godejohn under the bus, pretending that he locked her in the bathroom and then went and did something to her mom. Notice as well that we're not seeing a lot of change between, if you watched my prior video or you've seen this interrogation before, not seeing a lot of change in body language between this moment and prior, when she was being deceptive, when she admits to being deceptive, when the interrogator says she's being deceptive, and now when she is very evidently still being a bit deceptive.
Just staying as hopeful as possible. I want them home. I want to hold them. And I want them home. What happened was we woke up, I heard them playing in the next room beside us, and I was drifting in and out of sleep, and they're not the type of kids that we tell them not to go outside on their own. We always make sure that we're out there with them, watching them, and they happen to just get out that sliding door, and we can't hear it when it...
At the beginning of this part of the clip, Balea says that she's remaining hopeful, and that normally comes with an uplifting of features, an eyebrow flash for a creasing, and the entire body uplifting with the words hopeful. Now, given this case is a very sad situation, it does make a bit of sense that we might not see that, but it is something I want to note, that when she says hopeful, we're not seeing that express that they're remaining hopeful. We do see downward glabella furrowing in a lot of this, but this also appears to come with the narrowing of palpable fissures and might just be more because there's the sun in her face. She does also look downward quite a bit, which seems to be emotional eye accessing, recalling things, and that makes sense to do in this situation as she has to remember what took place. It can also be a sign, though, of storytelling, of coming up with what she's going to say next in a situation that is indeed emotional, but isn't necessarily because she feels any sort of attachment to what she's saying. And this incongruence in what she's verbally expressing and the downward eye accessing can indicate that she might be hiding something, that she might be deceptive in some way. Now, of course, there are other possibilities here. The downward eye accessing really could be because she is feeling emotional about the situation as she's expressing she is, but normally that would come as someone who is staring downwards, not seeming to scan the pavement as if she's looking bracing for what she's going to say next. There's certainly a lot of jaw shifting, some disagreement and discomfort around certain areas of this that you'll see, such as when she discusses the children playing. There's some discomfort and disagreement around that, and her expressing that the kids escaped through this sliding door. There's a brief eyebrow flash as she says happened to get out of that sliding door, bringing emphasis to the sliding door. So that's a big key in this case that both her and the stepfather have mentioned is the sliding door. There's a lot of significance around this sliding door. And we see that same significance from the stepfather when he mentions culverts. When it comes to Malaya, however, those eyebrow flashes don't come around too frequently, don't emphasize other areas that we should see it. And I say this in many videos, but we really should see those eyebrow flashes pop up when there's significance to something such as staying hopeful, such as this is what she told her partner. You'll see that in a moment. Instead, we see a lot of jaw shifting, and that indicates discomfort, disagreement around something. And it's interesting when she says that around the kids playing and getting out of the sliding door.
2 a.m. and I left around 5:15. She was still here. And like about 12:10 and that afternoon, her friend Nicole showed up at the door. Like I had texted Shanann a few times that day, called her, say, but she never got back to me, but she wasn't getting back to any of her people as well. And that's what really concerned a lot of people, is like, she's not getting back to her, like, she doesn't get back to me, that's fine, like, she gets busy during the day, but she didn't get back to her people, which was very concerning. And Nicole called me when she was at the door, and that's...
So here we see more shoulder shrugging, more brief, casual shoulder shrugging, and verbally he's setting the scene for this just being a common thing for him to not really care if Shanann calls back, if she responds, because he just knows she gets busy. But what he's saying a lot, and what he's expressing a lot here, is that she has a lot of friends and they're concerned about her. Now, most likely all of her friends are not bombarding Chris with text and calls, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to know all about a lot of people being concerned about her being missing. Maybe 1 or 2 people may have called. He also keeps pointedly looking towards the door and saying Nicole, and there's an eyebrow flash around Nicole, some emphasis around that, but nothing else in this. His blink rate is increased a bit here as well, perhaps a little bit of stress around this, then a bit of a tongue jut behavior, very stressed, which we do know by now that he was being deceptive.
There's no...
We first got in there? Both of us were.
So how long was he in there for? Like, this video is at 11:12 when it starts, so was he in there for like a long time prior to recording this?
No.
So it goes from funny to no longer funny, but you're the only one laughing.
But I didn't think that he...
First, we have Sarah Boone, who ended her boyfriend's life by putting him in the luggage and essentially suffocating him. First, Sarah Boone starts out, her breathing is a bit labored, so you could tell she's already a bit anxious, and then she has some abdominal blocking there, some indications of perhaps anxiety. This being an interrogation room, that would make sense, and this becomes her baseline in this particular interrogation. The set of behaviors that I look at, and anything that veers away from that may indicate some significance to what's going on. In this case, when it's brought up how long her boyfriend has been in this suitcase, and how this is allegedly not just a game of hide and seek as she claims, her hand goes up to her face right here. Now, our blood pressure goes up when we're stressed, our nasal tissue swells, a lot of things happen when we're stressed out, in particular when we're being deceptive, but just generally when we're stressed out. So her touching her nose there is just one indication, something that veers away from her baseline. And when I look at the environment, how she has not prior to that scratched her nose, that's not part of her baseline. There's not perhaps some allergies or dust mites, because of course she has not touched her nose prior to this moment. When this particular thing is brought up, tells me that she is perhaps being deceptive.
And you also told this jury that you wore a backless dress to the Mordecai premiere that very same night.
I did.
And you testified that you were checking for bruises in the car on the way to the event to make sure that there were, quote, no visible marks, right?
I was checking on my phone after the event to see...
Then we have Amber Heard during her cross-examination during the famous Johnny Depp trial. Camilla asked her about a particular moment where allegedly she had this bruising or something on her back that was shown to the public, and Camilla's asking about this instance. Now, throughout this trial, Amber is capable of, for the most part, turning to the jury, answering, and there's hints of perhaps some anxiety or things going on, some significance around particular events. But for the most part, she has a baseline, and that's turn to the jury, answer, perhaps some lip compressions, a tiny bit of rapid blinking here and there. But aside from that, there's no huge displays of expression except for specific moments like this one, where this bruise is brought up, and suddenly her nose scrunches up, her lips compress, her palpable fissures there around her eyes narrow. Then she closes her eyes. There's some eye blocking, some aversion there, and she can't just answer, turn to the jury and say, that's correct. That's what took place. This is what took place. There's just a lack of confidence here that tells me that this is not just anxiety, that this is not just her trying to remember something that happened, because it's not eye accessing. It's not recalling information here or around here. It's a complete cluster of behaviors that say something else is taking place, and she's not confident in answering this question.
And when did you move to Missouri?
In 2005.
And who did you move to Missouri with?
My mother,
And what was her name?
Claudina Blanchard.
Did she go by any other names?
Dee Dee.
So I say Dee, you...
Right after she says Claudina Blanchard, there's a bit of what looks like a quavering of her chin there, but it's more of a mouth shrug. Possibly because that is not what she typically called her mother, and that may bring some discomfort there. This isn't a full committed mouth shrug, just something that she is not certain about that indicates a lack of certainty around saying that, most likely because she did not call her mother that, nor did most of the people, it seems, in their lives. There continues to be a lack of blink rate around anything that's not an emphasis to what she's saying. There are no illustrators an emphasis to what she's saying. There are no forehead creases or eyebrow flashes around what she's stating, except I was there for 7 years, except for specific points, and that indicates more honesty to me than not. It is an emphasis to what she is stating when she raises her eyebrows and there's that forehead creasing there.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Do you know a Nicholas Godejohn?
Yes, sir.
And when did you meet Nicholas Godejohn?
In October 2012.
How did you meet him?
On an online Christian dating website.
Remember the name of that site?
ChristianDatingForFree.com.
When she says that she met Nick on ChristianDating.com, on a Christian dating site, we see more of a pull of her mouth, which typically indicates content or dislike around something. So what we're seeing here is perhaps some dislike around this dating site and being part of it.
What were you when you met? Yeah.
About 21.
In June of 2015, what did you consider your relationship to Nick to be? What kind of relationship?
We were boyfriend-girlfriend.
And when did you become boyfriend and girlfriend?
In October 2012.
Here a few things also take place. She says, we were, and you see her eyebrow raise and the forehead creasing, emphasizing we were. Then she starts to shake her head, no, we were, and then she says boyfriend, girlfriend. Most likely this is because she didn't view it that way. She viewed him as something not as attached to herself. That is just my belief, though I very much see her being deceptive in this part because what she's saying and her head movements completely clash with each other. This isn't always the case. When we're saying that we like something or we can't believe something, we might shake our head no, even though we're saying we can't believe something or that we like something. We're saying something in the affirmative, but shaking our head no. So it's not always an indication of deception or something else going on there. In this case, however, when she's speaking about something but the head movements aren't an emphasis of, she's saying we were boyfriend and girlfriend, and then her head continues to move for a slight bit after, and it's not an emphasis to what she's saying. It doesn't indicate disbelief around something. This is most likely her not fully telling the truth about this situation and that she did not view it that way or does not like that perhaps Nick viewed it that way. Most likely it is, though. She did not view Nick as a boyfriend or someone close to her, and she's already setting this scene for Nick to be detached from her, not close to her, not someone she views in a positive light.
When did you first meet Nick in person?
March of 2015.
So between October of 2012 and March of 2015, you hadn't actually met Nick in person?
That is correct.
What type of relationship did you have during that period of time?
Online relationship.
And by online, what do you mean?
Strictly communicating through Facebook.
Any other ways other than Facebook?
Instant text messaging, emails.
All by way of computer and cell phones?
Yes, sir.
In this bit, her eyes start to move towards other people in the courtroom, and it veers away from her baseline. Something else is going on there, and we see more of a blink rate that's not an emphasis to what she's saying. You do see her eyebrows raised and the forehead creasing around parts of this where she says that it was strictly online, and then she says Facebook, and she starts to glance towards other people in the room, looking to see how others are reacting, and also possibly just considering what she's going to say next.
Did you send videos to each other?
Yes, sir.
Prior to March of 15, when you indicated you met Mr. Bojan for the first time in person, had your mother met him?
No, sir.
Did she know he existed?
No, sir.
Why is it she didn't know?
Because it was a secret relationship and my mother would never allow me to have a boyfriend.
Why not?
Because she controlled every aspect of my life.
Then we saw her breathing become a little more labored around them dating in that situation. When she says that her mother did not allow her to have a boyfriend, however, she looks down before she commits to raising her eyebrows. Her emphasis is after what she says, and it's not in emphasis to what she's saying, which is typically more of an indication of disbelief of something, skepticism of something. If we're listening and acknowledging something that seems bizarre, absurd, outrageous in any manner, something that we may be skeptical about or not believe, we will raise our eyebrows and you will see forehead creasing. We're not seeing this here until after she speaks, and this is typically someone who is being deceptive. I also want to note that she's stating that she has participated in a number of online activities, and in some interviews, again, she states that her mother isolated her, would not allow her to have friends. However, when it comes to someone who is abusive and will isolate someone, isolation isn't necessarily fully removing someone from society. Often when it comes to abuse, isolation is more removing a strong support. That's usually your friends and family that are mutual, that are already known, not someone you met online. And you are typically not able to meet people online freely. If you do, however, the abuse will get in the way of that relationship if they find that that is a strong support for you. So isolation doesn't necessarily mean never going anywhere, never talking to anyone. But what we see here is someone who is freely capable of being online and finding new relationships that may become a strong support.
Did you and Nick ever talk about the fact that you were not allowed to date?
Yes.
How many times do you think?
I don't remember.
Did you and your mother ever have any discussions about whether you were ever going to be able to date?
Yes, sir.
Did you and Nick talk about that?
We may have.
What did your mother say about your ability to date going forward?
She said that it would never happen, that she would never allow it.
What about...
First, we see some aggression around her stating that her mother said she would never allow it. Her teeth start to show, her chin juts out. You see some aggression there. Prior to that, she says that she did talk to Nick about Dee Dee not allowing them to be boyfriend and girlfriend. However, when she says this, there are no illustrators, no emphasis around this, and her tone is lowered. This does indicate that something else is going on there and that this is perhaps not fully the truth. She does not elaborate, but then she's asked, how often did they talk about it? And she says, I don't know. And you see annoyance there, her eyebrows going down, her upper lip raising, and a bit of annoyance around this question. She's not comfortable answering this question. It's possible that she doesn't know, but it doesn't make sense for this to be an annoying question for her to answer.
Marriage. Did you and Nick ever talk about marriage?
Yes.
Did you and your mother ever discuss whether or not you'd be able to get married someday?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
She said that she wouldn't allow it.
In June of 2015, were you in a wheelchair?
Yes.
Did you know you were in a wheelchair?
Yes.
Here, when she says she wouldn't allow it, she looks over at someone else in the courtroom. She doesn't keep that consistent contact she has had with the man asking her questions that we see throughout this. Her blink rate continues to be in emphasis to what she's saying until marriage is brought up, and then you see a little bit more of a blink rate that comes when she's not just speaking. And a lot of her responses here, there are no eyebrow flashes, no forehead creasing, nothing in emphasis to what she's saying, and her breathing becomes a bit more labored again. She seems a bit anxious about this bit, and then the aversion to Dee Dee not allowing her to be married, to have relations, tells me that there's something else going on there.
You guys good?
Yep.
Cool. Well, it's been an interesting 2.5 weeks.
Has it only been that long?
Yeah, it's been feels a little longer, I would say. Yeah, it went fast. Guilty. Did you expect that?
No.
Not at all.
I mean, obviously I knew that's possibility. Yeah. So it was a bit of a surprise.
Now, we do see a normal blink rate here. With Lori Vallow, I don't want to focus too much on the glabella furrowing, the grief muscles, because with her, this is just naturally part of her face, this wrinkling of the muscles here. And that can make it a little bit difficult to tell when exactly she's being aggressive, if she's surprised, if she's skeptical, things along those lines. At the very least, we know that what we haven't seen in many of the interviews and interrogation videos of Lori Vallow, if you've followed this case, is grief. Downward glabella furrowing in a way that's not natural for her. And in fact, we see the complete opposite. We see a smile. We see those muscles contracted around the orbicularis that show that she is genuinely smiling and not sad about this at all, which is unusual for someone who has lost their children. Even if they feel like this is something that they had to do, in the case of people who have ended the lives of an abuser, even that should come with some amount of grief. Even leaving an abuser comes with some amount of grief that we should be able to see. It isn't happiness, relief, or anything along those lines. Even though we may feel some bit of relief, there is still some grief attached to this person and the memories that you may have with them. As people who are in abusive relationships don't endure that every single day of their life. Usually that is not the pattern of abusers, and there will be happy memories attached to that relationship. In this case, this is her kids, and she expresses no sadness, even though her narrative attached to this is that she had to end their lives because they were possessed. This isn't typical of everyone associated with the Church of the Latter-day Saints. I have been a Mormon before, and that is not what Mormons just in general are taught or believe in. But this is the narrative that Lori herself has attached to this situation and why she had to end the lives of others, and taking those matters in her hands. And in this case, I know I'm not talking about nonverbal cues as much here in this part, but I do want to note that this is someone in control, someone taking matters in their own hands, someone who feels superior to others and believes that she is in charge of doing this sort of thing. Even if she were detached from reality, which we would see someone who doesn't indicate this level of control. If we were seeing someone detached from reality, we would still not see someone feeling that they are superior enough and in control enough that they would feel in charge of ending the lives of others. Now, this is not always the case, but most likely this is what we would see, and not someone who feels superior and in control. That points more to narcissism, and the lack of grief points more to possible antisocial personality disorder.
Joe, thank you for having me. Yeah, my pleasure. So in your recent docuseries, you discussed the 2016 abduction, and what was once said was a hoax, you say was not a hoax. It actually did happen. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Well, I think that the primary objective for me is to be able to tell my side of the story. And my federal charge is for lying to a federal officer. It is not for faking a kidnapping. And it's really important to understand that while there's narratives spinning out there that I've changed the story, I've never changed the story other than the identity.
So this is where eyebrow flashes really mean a lot, because right now we have Sherry doing what's called the romancer. She's very focused on Annie. There's prolonged focus on Annie, no real blink rate. This is called the romancer because it really builds rapport. It's a connection to the other person that in some cases would allow for no space to disagree. So normally if someone is making prolonged eye contact, they come off as very believable, because people are under the impression that if you break eye contact, you are lying, which is not true. So this prolonged eye contact really establishes a connection with the other person and also comes off as believable. So we see this throughout this interview with Sherry Sherry Papini, as she wants to be believed, of course, and she also wants to really connect with this interviewer. And Annie here might be less likely to disagree or really question Sherry if there's that connection there. So it just leaves less room for disagreement and for any kind of questioning. And at the same time, Sherry's breathing is a bit labored, indicates a bit of perhaps anxiety or discomfort that you don't see elsewhere in her body. Her hands are not moving, which is another thing. There are no illustrators, which are movements of your hand in relation to what you're saying, an emphasis of what you're saying, and we don't see any of that here. Instead, she's just focused on Annie. Another thing I will say about the romancer here is that prolonged eye contact with someone gives someone the idea that they are the only focus, that they are significant to this other person, and again, it just builds a connection and rapport with the other person because that person may feel important. This works especially in cases where the other person might have low self-esteem, which I don't believe is the case with Annie here, but there's a possibility of that with anybody, and people such as Sherry Papini will take advantage of that.
Of the person that held me captive. I've always maintained that I was held against my will and tortured. The details of that have never changed. I was just too afraid to come out with the identity of the person that held me captive.
So can you walk me through that day from your perspective, right when you first went out to go for the run?
So on November 2nd in 2016, I had made arrangements with my ex-boyfriend, the one that I had been secretly having an emotional affair with. It was getting to a point where things were getting a lot more serious and I wanted to end the relationship. He wanted to do that in person. He wanted to continue talking. So he said that he wanted to come out into town. And
Sherry's also very particular with her words when she distances herself from what's taking place and when she takes direct ownership. In this case, you see some indications of that, but it's not as much as we will see later on in this interview. So here she says the details haven't changed. And then when she says that she was afraid, there's an asymmetrical shoulder shrug and some eye blocking, a prolonged blink there, closing of the eyes. There's some aversion to being afraid. Perhaps she does not want to be seen as weak. This is just one clue that she might want to maintain this idea of some amount of control in this situation. And you'll generally see that with people who have personality disorders such as antisocial personality disorder, which I don't believe Sherry Papini has, although there are some clues there. I'm not a licensed psychologist, but typically you will see this more with sociopaths. Again, I don't think that Sherry is one, but I can't diagnose her. And you see this aversion to the word afraid, even though she wants Annie to believe that she was afraid in this situation, that James was a bad guy. Now, for those of you who don't know James, the ex-boyfriend that she left with, that she pretended had taken off with her and she left her kids. Prior to that, she allegedly was this wonderful mom and she would never do such a thing. So it was really frightening to her friends and family what took place. And then it turns out in 2016, she had lied about the entire thing. She had pinned this narrative on two women, and there is an element of racism that I don't want to go into, but it was found that she had lied about the entire thing, that two women had not did her, that she had left with her then ex-boyfriend James, and now she is trying to spin the narrative into it being James's fault. James not her husband, James her ex-boyfriend who she left with, and then she committed mail fraud, which is essentially what did land her in prison for, I believe, about 18 months from what I've read. And now the narrative is that she had no clue what was going on and James was the one that took off with her. This was not the plan. And we're going to see throughout this that there's no illustrators, no emphasis in any of this. The eyebrow flashes are very particular. She emphasizes things with her eyebrows at specific points, which is important to note because that's when she might be actually telling the truth as opposed to when she's lying. Because a lot of this, she is being deceptive. I will say allegedly, but there are a lot of indications of deception throughout all of this. Her lack of emphasis around things in particular, her lack of forehead creasing and eyebrow flashing, I always say, but also other indications, her having to romance and really build this connection with Annie that people who are being honest don't typically have to do. And it can be a sign that someone's trying to take advantage of you. In this case, a sign that Sherry's trying to take advantage of Annie here.
To some extent, it's comforting to hear you say that because it was never my intention to piss anybody in your family off. You know, I'm not in it to get a conviction. I get nothing out of it. I get zero.
Exactly. You have a job you're trying to do.
I found a few of them. I found a few that sucks both ways.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
It is what it is. Where I get sideways with people tends to be when I turn to you.
Well, verbally, she's further indicating that she's agreeable, this is casual, that she's not offended, and doesn't believe her family is offended by what this interrogator has said. She gets a little more still. There are less movements at this point. She's slowly starting to give up on moving around in her handcuffs and indicating these are on and they're uncomfortable. There's a lot less adapters and illustrators around this. When I say illustrators, I mean movements and emphasis and in relation to what she's stating. When she's saying you have to do what you have to do, that is an example of an illustrator. She's illustrating towards him, you have to do what you have to do. And in this manner, she places herself again on an agreeable side of this interrogator, being very friendly and very concerned with how he views her.
By thanking the court for allowing me the time and opportunity to speak today. My name is Olivia, and I am the big sister of Kaylee Gonzalez, and I was blessed to love Madison Mogan as a sister too. I'm not here today to speak in grief. I'm here to speak in truth. Because the truth is, my sister Kaylee and her best friend Maddie were not yours to take. They were not yours to study, to stalk, or to silence. They were two pieces of a whole, the perfect yin and yang. They are everything that you could never be.
Let's talk about his stance here, because he's not a very attentive stance. It invites curiosity, but also is one of someone who perhaps feels a bit threatened. He isn't challenging the person speaking. His chin is not up. He's not revealing that vulnerable part of his body there. It's a bit down. His shoulders are up, a bit tense. His arms are at his side like this, a bit open, but this is the stance of someone who's not submitting himself to the grief and the anger in the room, or to any emotion. It gives him this illusion of control that he actually does not have in this trial. But this is something we would very much do if we are feeling perhaps threatened, sitting like this, appearing to be superior to the person speaking, even if that is not reality. So he's very much not submitting himself to emotions here, though his lips thin out a bit. He has a little bit of content there, but not a high blink rate or anything else going on. That really confirms that that is exactly what we're seeing. We're not seeing anything else going on. Now, despite any diagnosis he may or may not have, what we're looking at here is a man who wants to feel in control, and that isn't specific to any diagnosis. Everyone to some extent wants to feel that they are in control, but we're not seeing any real levels of anxiety, just discomfort a bit around not feeling in control of the situation. Again, he's not submitting himself to any grief and anger that's in the room. He's not necessarily reacting fully to what's being said, and he is at one point looking around, watching the reactions of people in the room, seeing what's going on, and again, giving himself this feeling of control that he otherwise would not feel in this situation.
Loved, accepted, vibrant, accomplished, brave, and powerful. The truth about Kaylee and Maddie is they would have been kind to you. If you had approached them in their everyday lives, they would have given you directions, thanked you for the compliment, or awkwardly giggled to make your own words less uncomfortable for you. In a world that rejected you, they would have shown mercy. Because the truth is, I'm angry. Every day I'm angry. I'm left shouting at the inside of my own head.
There is one blink that occurs there very briefly, very subtly, when she says that he would have been shown mercy. He perhaps does not believe this. Otherwise, there is nothing going on there. No reaction at all to anything in this specific bit. He perhaps does not fully believe that he would have been shown mercy in the same situation. It's possible and likely that he believes that all people are like himself, that he is not really all that abnormal, even though this is a man who non-verbally is not having any reaction to emotional stimuli, which is typical of those who have antisocial personality disorder. But again, I'm not really here to diagnose anyone. I'm not going to discuss whether he is actually a psychopath or has autism. This is just non-verbally what I would see in anyone, someone who would otherwise feel threatened if they weren't sitting in such a stance. There is a point in this where he closes off his body and he does perhaps feel a lot of discomfort when specific people speak up, as opposed to everything else we see in this particular trial where he doesn't appear to react at all. But you do see very much that his shoulders are tensed up. Even though he appears casual, this is not a casual stance. He is trying to give himself this feeling of some control. And if he does have antisocial antisocial personality disorder. Something that sociopaths and psychopaths hate the most is feeling a lack of control. Now, again, I'm not going to say that that is specific to a diagnosis though, because a lot of people who don't have antisocial personality disorder also would like to feel in control of a lot of situations, especially a situation like this. So that in itself does not point to whether he is or isn't a sociopath or psychopath. The lack of blink rate, the lack of reaction to emotional stimuli does indeed point to that specific diagnosis. But again, I am not here to diagnose him.
Everything I wish I could say to you. The truth about me is when I heard the news, I didn't cry. I listened for them. I promised them I would. That I would fight for them. That I would show up, no matter what it cost me. I swore I'd never let them feel alone. Because you see, I've always been their heavyweight. I've always been the one to fight the battles they didn't feel ready to fight themselves. All it ever took was a call, and they knew I would handle it for them, no matter the time, no matter the cost. They could wave their white flag because they knew I would never back down, not for them. And not even death could change that. Somewhere along the line, I started to think about what I would say to them if I was given just one last chance.
Imagine you're in a business meeting and you are the supervisor in the situation. You're attentive, you're in control, you're the one in power here, and someone finally says something that's in agreement to what you said. You might move forward. And that's very much what we see here. Again, this illusion that he has some control in this situation. He moves forward when the person speaking says, wave this white flag. This is an agreement, and he moves forward, feeling a bit less threatened there, a bit curious about what's about to be stated. As someone has mentioned that there would be some form of submission, surrender there, white flag being symbolic of someone who would surrender. Although a lot of what she discusses here is that she would fight. And there's a brief blink there when she says the word that she would fight. Again, this is a threat to Brian Koberger's control or illusion of control there, bring him a bit of discomfort there. Now, there's not a lot that shows that he feels highly uncomfortable there, but just that brief blink there, that veering away from baseline.
Why you were forced to be in a wheelchair?
No, sir. She just forced me to be in one.
And how long had you been in a wheelchair as of June of 2000?
There are a lot of indications of discomfort around her being in a wheelchair and the timeline around that. Her breathing becomes much more labored, but then she moves her hair out of the way. She's no longer connected and engaged with the man asking her questions, no longer maintaining consistent eye contact. Her chin goes up, and she's glancing around the courtroom. She looks towards where I believe Nick Godejohn is, and it seems that her discomfort could be around that and not as much around the discussion about the wheelchair and the timeline of that. Though what I believe took place here is that most likely she didn't tell Nick the things that she is now telling this man, and she props herself up entirely with her torso. Body language wise, she has repositioned herself to be superior to him or whoever she's glancing at in that direction, and the anxiety seems to completely disappear there. Her breathing is not as labored at that moment.
Did you and your mother obtain any kind of advantage by you being in a wheelchair?
Yes, sir.
What kind of advantage did you obtain?
Financial, attention, charity.
Financially mean money?
Yes, sir.
Did you obtain money as a result of you being in a wheelchair?
Yes, sir.
How'd that work out? How'd that pass?
Judge, I'm going to be up to the relevance of that. There's been no connection that the defendant behind this.
Well, I'm assuming, Ms. Perry, you're going to tie this up.
I go up right now. Did you and Nick ever talk about the fact that you didn't need to be in a wheelchair?
Yes.
Did you ever talk to him about why you were required to be in a wheelchair?
Interestingly, there is no indication of anxiety around being asked about her potential fraud. The attention she gained from being in a wheelchair, the money she gained from charities, and that would typically bring anyone anxiety as they would feel some shame or some nervousness around admitting this. We don't see shame. We don't see her chin go down. We don't see her protecting that vulnerable part of her body. We don't see any indications of shame or guilt around this. This is someone who is very confidently able to say that there is monetary gain and there is attention to be gained from being in a wheelchair. However, she is placing blame on her mother in this instance. I can't say for sure it was or was not Dee Dee's fault, but typically if it was someone else's fault, if it was her mother's fault, she would feel shame and guilt about participating in this and being part of it, or perhaps some anger that we even saw when she was discussing participating in a Christian online dating site. But we aren't seeing any of those indicated here.
tell the jury why it is that you obtained money as a result of being in a wheelchair?
Because people felt sorry for me.
And they would do what?
And Judge, I'm just going to object to general relevance at this point.
I'll allow for the time being. You may answer, ma'am.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Asked you why.
There is what looked like a single shoulder shrug around. They believe the lie. They believe the fraud. Again, no indications of remorse or guilt or shame around this. No protecting, defensive, turtling, anything. Just a single shoulder shrug. Now, it's possible that that was a fully committed shoulder shrug there, but I cannot see the other shoulder as it is covered by this woman's head. So it's possible that she did entirely shrug there. But we see her shoulders go up and her just indicating that she's uncertain as to why people did buy into her being a wheelchair and feel sorry for her. And again, no level of shame or guilt around this that you would typically expect from someone who did not want to fully participate.
Sure. We met
When did you tell Nick that you didn't need to be in a wheelchair?
a year into our relationship.
So if your relationship began in October of 2012, it would have been sometime in 2013 that you first told him that you really didn't need to be in a wheelchair.
That is correct.
Were you ill during this period of time?
No, sir.
Did you ever tell Nick that you were ill or that you had illnesses?
I told him that I had illness, and yes, sir.
Did you ever tell him that you really weren't ill?
Yes, sir.
When did you tell him you really weren't ill?
Verbally, what she's expressing here is that she did tell Nick about a year into their relationship that she didn't need the wheelchair, wasn't really sick, and then there's this distancing language around, I did tell him that, yes. Whereas in other areas of this, she just says, yes, that is correct. And in agreement, here we see her elaborate a little more and put this distance between her saying this and Nick. Now, this is not an indication of deception or her fully detaching herself from Nick, but the fact that she did know that she was not sick at the time and was having to tell Nick this, perhaps there is some aversion to that we are seeing verbally.
Here, I mean, I pulled up and I could see him, and I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. And my boy over there, I could see it was.
I'll start off by saying I believe all four of them are sitting in a car in the perhaps driveway or yard of where this crime took place. And we start off seeing that Alex is not actually making eye contact clearly with anybody asking him questions. Though they are in a car, so position-wise, that could be why. But the fact that his eyes are sideways, shifting very briefly and very subtly towards the man asking him questions, trying to get more information, is very unnatural. He doesn't want to directly confront the man asking him questions. Now, when we're emotional, when we're truly in distress, we will withdraw socially. So sometimes it could be a case of someone being in true distress, but the fact that his blink rate is very normal, the fact that it almost looks as if he's smiling in some points in this, there are certainly no real tears, no glabella furrowing there in between the eyebrows, no grief muscles, no emphasis on anything, no indications of shock, all these things that we should see. Verbally, what he's expressing is that he sees this man, he knows it was bad in his mind, but he doesn't go after this person. He doesn't even go after this person after he discovers his wife and son are dead. That is a bit alarming to me because after discovering his wife and son are dead, he makes no attempt to go after who might have done it. And just body language wise, non-verbally, he's not expressing that he's truly in distress. What we're seeing here, when he starts to pretend to cry, his head goes down. He's protecting that vulnerable part of his body, which we would typically do if we were in distress. But he's really having to work hard, put in a lot of effort to scrunch up his face. There's not a real authentic contraction of muscles around the orbicularis, and there's still some aversion, and he's very noisy. This isn't natural. This is most likely his attempts to make sure that whoever's asking him questions doesn't get any information out of him. Can't ask him questions, can't receive information. I believe that the man asking him questions knows this, as he doesn't reach out and comfort this man. He's in fact the only one that doesn't do so. He most likely knows something else took place.
And I ran over to Maggie, and Actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to...
There's no sense of urgency or panic in his voice. This isn't a missing case, so it makes sense he's not very panicked because of someone being missing and him having to make sure they're found safely, but he should at least be panicked about the fact that his family's not dead. Someone else did this. He should be in some sort of shock. We're not seeing all of this. Instead, he appears to actually be laughing, but he covers his face. His face is very bright red, but there's no sniffling. There's nothing actually taking place here. Again, this is just noisy. This is emotional barriering. This is keeping people from getting information, which an innocent person would typically not have to do. Verbally, he also expresses he tried to turn over Maggie. Well, first it was his son, and then he figured it out. He doesn't elaborate on figured what out and what there was to figure out, and why he would reach for his son's phone instead of checking for a pulse. He doesn't note, I checked for a pulse, I checked to see if either of them are still alive, I ran after the guy, I called 911. Nothing that would instinctually happen in a case like this when someone has just been killed. A few people have asked me to analyze Dee Dee Blanchard's behavior around Gypsy, and what I will say from the pictures that I've seen, and there are a few of them, but a few pictures and videos that I have seen, are that habitually Gypsy is the one clutching her mother's hands. And now Gypsy's narrative surrounding this is that Dee Dee would control her responses to certain questions and certain medical treatments and events by squeezing her hand or squeezing her arm or manipulating her in some way, being threatening in some manner, and showing Gypsy that there would be consequences later if she doesn't perhaps answer something correctly or handle something the correct way. As far as hand movements go, Dee Dee is very lightly clasping Gypsy's shoulder. Now, if Dee Dee were to habitually grip Gypsy's hand or grip Gypsy's shoulders to persuade Gypsy to say something specific, to lie to people and to con people, this would play out also in videos and pictures. But we don't see that. Instead, in many pictures and situations, Dee Dee's hand is lightly around Gypsy's shoulder. There's no grip. Her fingers are not digging into Gypsy's shoulder in any way. Both have genuine smiles, and in many videos, what I see instead is Gypsy clutching Dee Dee's hands and is the more dominant in that position there, as opposed to Dee Dee, who is often not the one clutching Gypsy's hands. This is just what I have seen so far, that it seems that Gypsy is very much the dominant one when it comes to hand positions. I was not personally in any doctor's offices with them, of course, but if this was something they habitually did, this would be something that they would habitually do everywhere. That's just naturally where their hand positions would go, most likely.
I told him vaguely about what was going on at home. He told me, you just pack your stuff and you can come live with me and work this off. And
now I tend to look at whatever may veer away from her normal movements in this particular interview. We're very much seeing a lot going on that tells us that she's not confident here. She feels perhaps a bit defensive. There's definitely some discomfort around what she's saying. Now, she expresses that she was at this science fiction convention. It was the Vision Con, put on by a couple of people who lived near her. It was hosted by people that she knew. So she and Dan Glidewell and a few others attended this Vision Con. And what we see is an increase in blink rate as she expresses this. And when she says vaguely, her head goes way down. And the transition of these movements is very important because she expresses this pretty confidently with an upright posture until she says vaguely, and then he says that she can come live with him. But when she says vaguely, her head goes way down, dips way down. This lack of confidence and protecting this vulnerable part of her body, she's not able to just sit and tell us what took place. We're not seeing eyebrow flashes where we should be. We're not seeing forehead creasing where we should see it. And even now on the screen, you see aggression, her chin jutted forward. This isn't just her talking about something and her chin jutting forward as she speaks, which is possible at points, but all of this indicates that there's something around this that she is angry about. That even though she was told she could allegedly come live with this person in Arkansas, something around this incident made her angry. It could very well be that Dee Dee got involved in this situation, and this is what made her mad, but there's some aggression there that we're seeing come out.
Do your laundry between 5 and 6. Because I know it's a drive.
You just threw it in the washer?
Mm-hmm.
So what were your plans when you came back from Publix? When you were headed home, what were you going to do then?
Just switch the laundry. Then go to her place. I'll go back to the car.
Okay. All right. So when's the last time you saw your parents?
I mean, we were supposed to... In a few days.
It's been a few days. So I might have misheard when he asked you about specifically how the washer and dryer setup was. Is it actually in the main house, or is it
It's in the main.
Okay, so you'd have to go in the main house where your parents live. You didn't see them, man, or anything? No, you went in the kitchen to get...
This isn't someone who has evidently come up with a plan as to what she would say if she had been caught, which indicates that she did not believe she would be caught, that she had successfully ended the lives of her mother and her father. What actually took place, though, is that her father survived long enough to call the police and let them know that Christina was the one that did this, and that the mother was also unresponsive. Christina's response here is pretty telling of that. Non-verbally, we do see eyebrow flashes, which I do talk about often because they just bring significance to something, whether someone is guilty or not. It just means that this is of significance and usually is honest, usually tells you what's important to this person. And in this case, she does have eyebrow flashes, but not around seeing her parents and the last time she saw her parents. Instead, we see her lips scrunch up and her glabella fur, that's that muscle in between the eyebrows there, glabella fur downwards, and what she must think is confusion, but normally what we would see is emphasis more with eyebrow flashing. This is very much feigned confusion, of course. Her lips scrunch up, her upper lip goes up and out, but it's also very thin. Normally, if the upper lip is fuller, this is someone who loves drama, who loves chaos, and more typical of someone who does have antisocial personality disorder. Not always, that alone will not tell you that someone is a sociopath, but it is more typical of someone who is a sociopath, but non-verbally does make sense to occur in someone with antisocial personality disorder because those people love chaos.